Welcome to today's LX Views. We'll be in the Landsdowne neighborhood, and I will be showing off a new format that I'm tinkering with. Let's start with a scoot through the neighborhood. So we start our scooter ride closest to the Providence Road intersection. And I shot this on a scooter in the tour, not sport setting.
Bike?
And here we are going down Landsdowne. So most people experience this neighborhood. It's a mid-century neighborhood built in the 50s and into the 60s. They experience it via car. This was the edge of town. This was the far, far eastern side of the Sharon Township. And you look around, the houses, this I'm assuming was a comfortable neighborhood. The houses are large, the lots are large. The architecture is very modern and optimistic, lots of glass. It's well integrated into the landscaping with a good mix of both public and private vignettes to be experienced from within the edifices themselves. The street does eventually connect to Sardis, but there are some curves to keep the traffic speeds, I'm assuming, slightly slower than they would be if it were just a straight line. Within Charlotte, you always have to worry about topography, just because of all of the various creeks and brooks and stuff we have here in the North Carolina Piedmont. Sometimes streets bend because there's a creek in the way. So I'm not sure what was at thought here when they laid out the Landsdowne Street, but it's pretty long. It's at this point 65, 70 years after its development. Its canopy is extremely mature. It has a sidewalk, which is unique for being this far out into the countryside at the time. And it's a neighborhood I first found with my spouse way back in like the middle of the last decade. We would come around here and walk when we were living in Commonwealth. I hadn't forgotten about it, but it started to get really redeveloped. And it seems like they've actually done a good job with Contemporaries, in my opinion. But there were some additions or some rehabilitations that were varying quality. Not so much on Landsdowne Street, but on the collector streets into Landsdowne. Now it's a well-established part of the Shalom Park neighborhood, which was why I was back over there. I saw some security vehicles, the Shamrim, coming through, and I gave them a wave. Always happy to see the guards out on the should we guardian angels? I don't know. It's what they were in Bay Ridge, but he ran for mayor too, right? Like, didn't that guy run against Eric Adams? I forget his name. He's like, he does the gosh, my classmate used to tell me about this stuff. He was I don't know. It's the dude who founded the Guardian Angels. Anyway, he lost the NYC memorial, or the mayoral candidate or whatever, to Eric Adams. But that's not here. That's not there anymore either. I think he still has his talk show, but I'm trying to edit a fair bit of that out. But if you know, you know what I'm talking about, right? Anyway, so Five Towns feel out here is the upshot of it. Yeah, Five Towns is nice, right? It's real nice. I used to go surfing out in Rockaway. That was as far as I'd go. Not far, not hard to reach. And this neighborhood, we were invited over. We actually used the pool. That's our new Rockaway beach. The pool at the Levine JCC is where the kids have learned to swim. And I like the splash pad. I think it's a fun splash pad. It's a fun pool. I went on the water slide. At the cafe, I like the tuna without toppings. Give me the straight tuna. It reminds me of what my mom used to make back in Boston, on whole wheat. Very good, wicked tasty. Wifey says I put too much mayo in the tuna. That goes back to my Nana. So my Nana would always complain about how her kids would put the spoon that they used to mix the tuna fish back in the mayo, and it would make the mayo jar taste like tuna forever, which would be annoying if you're trying to have some other mayo-based meal. So because of that, I just load up my tuna with mayonnaise, and it's very mayo-y. I make a very mayo-y tuna, and but the JCC uses a little less mayo than I do. Very similar to how my mom made it. I put onions and stuff in mine. So there you go, right? We're riding through Landsdowne talking about tuna fish sandwiches and enjoying the beauty. But we're coming up on the end onto Sardis Road. There are several other neighborhoods out in Sardis that are just really great examples of mid-century architecture and the old Sharon Township. And even we're on the borderline of the old Providence Township as well. But for now, that's what we got. Now let's look at some categories. That's right, I've grouped my houses that I've looked at into categories for quick analysis. And let's start with these contemporaries. So our first house that we're looking at is this new contemporary. I don't know much about architecture besides that I liked to look at this particular home. I thought that the yard was large, but the trees in the front were fairly well mature, giving it good shading and good cooling. I like how the garage is sort of hidden off to the side and not fully imposing like how many garages can be. I also like the shrubbery in front of it. The front room and all of the glass I think is just really special. If you have ever lived in an urban environment, in a tower or something like that, you're used to these large floor-to-ceiling pieces of glass, and you become nostalgic for them when they've been removed from your living space. So I'm glad to see that it's alive and well here in the Landsdowne neighborhood. I like the straight lines and the roof lines. They're classic and evoke for me sort of a known standard, but they're also just a little bit different, a little bit more forward-thinking. Here's another home that's contemporary. This one, the garage, I believe, is behind, so we're just seeing the home in full elevation. Every single front room has those floor-to-ceiling plate glasses, and it's outstanding. It's like, to me, like a stable house. So I don't know if you ever were riding around in Brooklyn, in historic like Brownstone, Brooklyn, and you'd occasionally come across a stable house. And the stable houses were fantastic because they had such amazing glasswork because they had to be able to get the carriages in and out. This is evocative of that, but obviously without the functionality. These are just to let light in and out and to let contemplation of the serenity of nature in and out as well. The glass looks like it's fairly well one way, so there's good privacy. Love the roof lines, very kind of flat. Again, evocative of a standard, but I have to imagine the roof lines do allow water to shut off a little bit better, and they might withstand the North Carolina Piedmont conditions somewhat better. Really great contemporary. Here's one, I couldn't tell if it was a ranch that had an addition done to it or if it actually was a new build. If you look at the footprint on the bottom, it looks to me like the old ranch footprint where they put a staircase in the front. They did a good job giving it that sort of Italianate Mediterranean tower turret on the front. Still using those high-pitched roofs. That's a motif that's consistent. I like the tin roof in terms of just strength. I've lived underneath one, underneath like an oak tree, and the acorns would get a little loud. But it looks like they have good protection from oak falling on their roof line. So really nice addition to the neighborhood. I feel like if it is a repurposing of a ranch, good one. Split levels are my favorite. Here's the split levels category. Oh, this is so fun. It's so asymmetric. What a great design, right? So where I come from, they have a lot of raised ranches up in New England, Connecticut, Western New England, even in Eastern New England. And this type of split level, I think, incorporates the best of both. So the living space is almost like that sunken hearth. You see that on the left. And then on the right-hand side are the suites for the kids. And then downstairs you have your office and your master's as well. And it's just... They stay cool. They have good space, great layout. Everything's close. It's I really love a split level. The only problem is they built them all in the 50s and 60s, and I would prefer to live in a bikeable neighborhood than a split level neighborhood. But I mean, look at this one too, right? Sort of flip-flop design. You can see the garage off the back, but what I love here is you can see the landscapes mature. So they're clearly, oh gosh, that's a tough one. The glass on the front is two-way, so they have a curtain, probably for privacy reasons. I would get some one-way glass and just enjoy that amazing lawn with the dappled sunlight, the dogwood, Japanese maple feature, which is probably fantastic in the fall. And then there's a large tree with some interesting hedging around it to also consider and ponder while you have some watermelon juice and seek refuge from the stress of the daily grind. Great split level. Love the door as well. You see that door? It's a mid-century door, kind of a ranch door. Reminds me of the Brady Bunch. If any of you watched the Brady Bunch way back when. It's got that, where was that? Torrance, Calabasas. It's got that mid-century feel. Here's a more traditional split level. So this is a motif in Charlotte. If you look at it, it's got a barn on the side. So pavilion off the side for the living. Looks like a fantastic place, a fantastic great room. You could do a lot in that space. Really functional and useful. I like the driveway with all the pebbles. I like that it's sort of a natural driveway. I like to do something similar with my property or my spouse's property. And then, but this one here, you have the barn ceiling on the, well, it's not quite the barn ceiling. It's just your standard peak roof. But I like the door. That orange door is cool. And they have the wicker chairs underneath the tree, so it's a cool yard to hang out in and wave hi to your neighbors. Just a cool place. I mean, I love a split level. I love seeing the ivy climb up the trees and protect the trees a little bit. I think that's Virginia creeper coming up those trees. And there are those horse fences around the side. Very modern. Great exterior design. I have to imagine the interior design is also outstanding. So kudos to that split level. Here's some ranches coming up now. This neighborhood has far more ranches than split levels. And it's a common dialect. So off the sides of a ranch, if you're a boomer, you know these well. Or if you grew up and your friends were kind of marginal, you know these as well, if you're a millennial. But basically the layout is you have a hallway, you have bedrooms off the hallway, and then the hallway leads into a great area where there's usually a chopped up kitchen, and then you may go down a step into a living room area that has pile carpeting and a field stone fireplace with a sliding glass door out into a back patio. And that's what all these ranches are like. It's what we built after the post 20th century, middle of the 20th century, when we started driving, basically, and when we had fully recovered from the Depression. This is what got built. There was a lot less traffic back then. You could go down Providence Road and be in uptown Charlotte in 20 minutes, and it wasn't a stressful ride. Everything was cool. And people built interesting architecture. I like the fireplace. Look at that fireplace. Chimney. Here's another ranch. No hip to the roof this time. Straight roof. Easy replacement. See the bedrooms. Master suite looks like it's got 2 panes. There's that. The door, I think, could be more playful, but it's got good bones. You have the big living area with the picture window. There's a tree in front of it, which I have to imagine harms the view out, but it also gives decent privacy maybe. Yeah, it's hard to say. It's cool though. I mean, the dappled lawn, it's gotta be a nice cool place to hang out in the summertime. Good refuge, quiet. The greenery definitely provides for just great fresh air to pull into your lungs while you enjoy the park-like experience. Here's one that's been recently redeveloped or rehabilitated. Interesting driveway, cool driveway. I like the walkway to the front. You go past the picture window. I don't know if that shed off the front is an addition or not. It could be original and just painted. Looks great. I like the garden work in front of it. Very zen. It's one of those things where you could, turn to your partner, whomever, and have a conversation, maybe an easy conversation, maybe a hard conversation. And in the background are these magnolia trees and low-hanging shrubbery, and it's bonded and it's forever. The landscaping. And it's out of your control. Here's a really big ranch. I just recorded this one because, it's so big. And reminds me of a 78 Mark V. It's got more power. It's got a better handling. It's got better acceleration. I feel like I'm driving a waterbed. That was a forget about it as a quote. Here we got, I don't know what this is. It's just another one that's been redone. This one you see when you come into the neighborhood. It's just sort of a demo of like, hey, what could you do with the right interior design, the right exterior design, without really, I have to imagine, spending all that much money. If that's your thing. I mean, land's still expensive now. It's not like it was 10 years ago when you could get into this neighborhood for a song, really. Now you're close to uptown. And it's really not far. You have to drive, but it's close. And they still got a decent housing stock. It's historically been pretty solid housing stock. So this is what happens when you do a faithful rehabilitation. And it's only going to get nicer. It could last another 2 generations if you wanted it to. This one felt more commercial in nature to me. I still recorded it. It has like that bump out over what I'm assuming is the great room with like floor to ceiling glass. It almost looks like the driveway is a turnaround driveway. So if they ever did like infill, like service infill, I'm sure this is a fantastic home just to live in as well. But if you did like a yoga studio or childcare or something, I mean, it would be very coffee shop. It has the bones for it. Here's another one I just wanted to record. I don't know if it'll, I don't know what this, I don't know. I'm less sanguine about the chances for this ranch. The lot's so big. But I wanted to record our architectural ornamentation. Specifically the dollhouse eaves that hang out over the sides. They give it that Swiss chalet feel. It's a little non-traditional, and I thought it was neat to document it. Whatever happens. I also like the brickwork, stonework, concrete work, privacy screen by the garage. Reminds me of what I used to experience when I went to elementary school. A similar building that had been built in the 1950s. Just that optimistic mid-century architecture. Now we're going to look at some colonials. Colonials are architectural form as old as the U.S. And here's one that's more Georgian in style. So their colonials are symmetrical. So the door's in the middle. On the left side is the living room. On the right side is the kitchen and the dining room, typically formal. Upstairs is the parents' suite, and then either 2 or 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. Looks like they have a great room off the side as well. I don't know what they do in those great rooms. I don't know what they do with them. But you can see this is just your standard colonial. Very pleasing. It's actually based off of the Greco-Roman temple, I've read. It's just, that's how old that architectural form is. And that's where the symmetry and stuff comes from as well. They have different kinds. They have Georgians that were built in the southeast around the turn of the time, and then they have the colonials, the saltbox that built up north. But yeah. But I know colonials. Everyone knows colonials well, just like everyone knows ranches well. If you grew up in North America, you grew up around them. It's just how it is. Here's a big old magnolia tree in front of a ranch-style colonial. So one of the funny things about ranches is they did try to make them in every architectural style, and this one is a ranch-style colonial. If you look at it, it looks to me like ranch bones. They put bay windows on and then added a second story too. That's my guess. I really don't know the story of this home, but that doesn't scream like colonial to me, just because it's not raised off the ground. Like you typically see more of the cellar exposed. And then here's a Georgian. Here's a fine Georgian. This is like opulence. There was this Christian Bale flick I watched as a kid. My dad made me watch it. And he's in North Asia. And he gets separated from his family and he's seeking support from anybody, really. So he falls in with these American GIs and he describes his old neighborhood and he says, "There was opulence." There was opulence. Here's some other notables. This is a catch-all category. I really struggled with this home, this split level. I wanted to... It looks good on the scooter ride. It's very noticeable. It's where the road first turns. I just... I don't know. I feel like it made other notables. That's what it didn't make the top three. It didn't make my 3 that I showed, example 3. It made other notables for whatever reason. You can take that as you will. It's still pretty cool though, in my opinion. I'd paint it a different color, personally. Like tie-dye. Like it's a Wednesday. Here is this is a motif common within Charlotte. This is the barn house split level I was talking about. I've seen in other architecture shows that barn style roof creates like a really high, almost a high roof, a hayloft style roof, which may lead to 10 or 12 foot ceilings, right? Fantastic. So I'm wondering if that's what's going on up there. I don't really know, but it could be if you had a creative rehabilitator. I mean, that's a huge volume. Can you imagine that being your master space? Stick the kids in the bottom, and then you have a big great room on the side, pool in the back, invite the friends over. Or you don't even need a pool. You can go to Shalom Park, or you can do whatever you want, right? And with that backyard swing set, just gathering space, garden, who knows? It's a huge lot. Look at the chimney too. It's also good. It's cool, very cool. And they're look around Charlotte. You'll see more barn house style split levels. It's a thing. Here's a proud and modest home sitting on a yard, Cape Codder. The town I grew up in had several Cape Cods. A lot of stuff from the 1870s as well. Yeah. Big lawn. Nice and green. You could do a lot with it. And, it's a split level. It's been built out over the years. And now it's kind of like an L ranch. I've been in Colonials that have L's off the back, and they're pretty cool. They're well integrated into the backyard, and you can have a good time. Here's another home. I thought that like the walkway was kind of interesting. It had almost like an institutional feel to it. And then the entryway as well, cloistered like that. It reminded me of like the pictures I've seen of cities in North Africa. So cool. Then we got some postmoderns. I called this one a postmodern. I probably could have called it a contemporary. I think I called it a postmodern because it mixes forms. It's probably the shed off front. This one probably could have gone a contemporary. Usually when I see both a curve and straight lines, that's when I start calling them postmoderns. But it could be more than that as well. The roofs are super pitched. I mean, you could just based off roof alone say, oh, the roof is so pitched. It's a postmodern. But here we also see sweeping curves, nonlinear and linear forms mixed, particularly in the shed roof, the shed additions, but also in the main doorway as well. Postmoderns are fun. Charlotte has a lot of postmodern architecture. It was built up in the 80s. And postmodern gets no love, but nowadays, but we'll miss it. There are several postmoderns that need to be dutifully preserved because it, like all architectural forms, deserves respect. It indicated it was significant at one point in time, and it still is. And it needs to be preserved, in my opinion, anyway. But nice space, good coverage, good shade. Architecture did a good job integrating it into the landscape. Here's a ranch that has had a postmodern addition done to it. I think it's actually very, very tasteful. The bump out off the front with the vault, the shed on the front as well. I've seen similar examples in my neighborhood of Dilworth. Not as big because the lots aren't as big in Dilworth as they are in Landsdowne, but yeah, I mean, you could have a fantastic existence in that space. I wonder what the architect. I mean, you could have a whole lofted family room. No one would still have plenty of space, right? Like that's the type of thing you can do in postmoderns. That is cool. I mean, that's why everyone loved them. That's why that was what was sold for a full generation. And I still go inside those postmoderns up by Carmel, up by by down the Pineville Road, and it's just stunning when you stand in there and you see these expanses and volumes. They're really well designed. And now this is my favorite section, the lawn and garden section. I come here for ideas. So here we see an ivy-covered front yard. It's hard in the Piedmont to grow grass underneath shade, but you need the shade. Look at that door, by the way, in the background, come into focus. You need the shade to keep everything from getting way too hot. So you have to put ivy down, and I like how they were able to find a good mix of both grass and ivy. I need to put more ivy in my front yard because I do have some massive willow oaks that just really make it hard for anything to grow. Here is a savanna style front yard. So smaller trees, they have to be pruned every few years, more grass, probably easier to maintain on a periodic basis, but more maintenance probably overall, is my guess. That said, it does look better from time to time. And the sight lines may be better. I don't know. It's a personal thing. It's a little more formal, that Savannah style front yard, but it's great. There's good dappled light. It's probably a little warmer than full shade coverage, but that's a good thing too. You can grow basil, you can grow garden vegetables and stuff when you have full sunlight. So flowers, stuff like that. It's a little bit easier to do. Cool yard. And then this was another barn split level, you'll see, but it wasn't for the architecture. This is for the garden here. They're doing an interesting thing with both the fieldstone walkway and then the just the selection of all the plants. I don't know if this is like with help or done independently. I like how it's almost like a two-tiered garden. They have the low shrubs, three-tiered. They have the mature trees as well. And then as we get a little bit further lower, you can see some like really tall ornamental grass, I think, which just pops out over the low shrubbery and probably just gives a lot for contemplation. I have to imagine the pollinators like it as well. It probably helps with road noise, privacy, all that stuff. Cool shrubbery around the side. I mean, if you wanted to go really crazy with the privacy, you could extend that shrub line all the way out to the front, even out to Landsdowne, and then you have this private garden to look out in from your front yard. Here is just another example of lawn and ivy. You can see how hard it is to grow grass and shade right there. If I had this lawn, I'd be extending the ivy out a couple meters. Magnolia tree. There are massive magnolia trees in this neighborhood. Magnolias they're very pretty. They have nice flowers, but they're evergreen. And that means year-round leaf collection. But cool lawn, right? It's probably easy to collect the leaves because you can just blow them. And the lawn's so flat and shorn. Nice trees behind the back, like the wall. Just a lot. And here's some miscellanea. So I wanted to show you a fully grown magnolia tree, just so you can get an idea of how large they can get. I'd never seen one before as a northerner. So they're big. They're 15 meters, 40 something feet, maybe 50 feet. Up close you can see they have those large leaves that fall year round. Inside of it there's great habitat for birds. So they're important habitat. And then I just thought this mailbox was over the top. And then what happened after looking at this mailbox was just too good to be true. So, Screaming Eagle. And then, look at that. 4 engines coming at you. Not supersonic, but flying out of Douglas, right? I think Douglas used to be an old Air Force base, Camp Green. And they still occasionally fly military aircraft out of there. Even though I think the majority of the operations down in the eastern half of the state. So, yeah, proud to be an American. Check you later.